Who would have thought that if you do something kind for someone, and it might be something seemingly small, even something that you say, who'd have thought that that might generate a ripple effect that might go on to impact over 100 people and you wouldn't even notice, because you do your wee kind thing and then you get on with the rest of your day. But what you don't see is what happens next. And what happens next is it can actually impact over 100 people. And here's where I'm coming from. It turns out that kindness has one of the highest R numbers I've ever come across in science. You know what R numbers rate, reproducibility rate. It's a measure of the contagiousness of something. So if something has a high R number, then it's more contagious, more infectious, to use the disease sense of the word, than something with a low R number. So the higher R number means the more contagious. And it turns out that kindness has an R number somewhere between 3 and 5. And I say somewhere between because it depends. It depends on where you live, how many, your population density, the interactions that you have. But as a ballpark average, you could say somewhere between kind of 3 and 5. But what's most interesting is researchers at Harvard and Yale found that it actually is contagious out to what's called 3 degrees of separation. And this is where it gets really interesting. So let's use the R number of 5 to really hit home the point, because I like to choose the bigger number here to really show you just how great the impact of a seemingly small thing is that you might do. Something, paying someone a compliment, checking in on someone, showing someone a wee bit of support, or physically doing something to help someone. What you don't see is what happens next. So what happens next is this. Let's suppose you do your wee kind thing, right? And then you get on with the rest of your day. What you don't see is if you were to follow that person around for the rest of the day, not that you will, but if you did, then what you would probably find is due to how you made that person feel. In science, we call it elevation. So the person's in a more elevated state from what they were in before, whether they're feeling happier or grateful or just, lifted and inspired in some way, but they're elevated more than they were before. So it's referred to as elevation. And because of how you made that person feel, that person will likely, over the course of the next day or so, will likely be kind or kinder to 5 people, simply because of how you made them feel. And those 5 people, that's the R number. Now, those 5 people are defined as being at 1 degree of separation from you. In other words, 1 social step away from you. Now, it turns out that kindness goes to 3 though. So if you happen to have a drone and track the behaviours of those 5 people, not that you would, but I'm just saying for argument's sake, if you did and you tracked the behaviour of those 5 people, what you will probably find over the course of the next day or so, those 5 people will also be kind or kinder to 5 people. So what you now have is 25 people at 2 degrees of separation receiving some form of kindness simply because of the wee first thing that you did. But kindness doesn't stop there, it goes to 3. If you happen to have a swarm of drones, not that you would do this, but if you did, and you tracked the behaviour and triangulated the behaviour of those movements and behaviour of those 25 people, what you'll also find is, on average, those 25 will also be kind or kinder to 5 people. So what you have now, at 3 degrees of separation from you, about 125 people receiving some form of kindness because of that seemingly small thing that you did. And I say on average, it's not an exact science here. Sometimes it's more than that. Sometimes it's less than that. But the point being, there's a wave that's created from that seemingly small thing that you did. Don't ever underestimate the power and the impact of a seemingly small show of support or encouragement or a little demonstration in some way of kindness. It's a wee bit like this. Imagine you're going to work or you're going somewhere and you casually flick a pebble into a pond and you hear it plop, but you don't pay any attention to it. You just get on the rest of your day. Maybe you board a train or a bus, or you get into your car, or you walk into your office, but you don't pay it any more heed. What you don't see is what happens next. So the wee pebble goes plop, and then it creates a wee wave, and the wave begins to spread now out over the pond, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And at the other side of the pond, there's a load of lily pads. Let's suppose 125 lily pads dotted around the pond, and they're all going like that. Now, they've no idea why they're doing that, but they're doing that because of the wave. And what set the wave in motion was the pebble dropped in a pond. Now, the pebble is a metaphor for a wee act of kindness that you dropped into someone's day. And the pond, the wave, It is a metaphor for human society and what's happening. And it's not lily pads rising and falling. It's smiles on people's faces that are rising. It's the quality of people's days. It's how people are feeling. It's elevation that people are feeling. Simply being on the receiving end of something seemingly small that you did. And I wanted to put it across like that because I think there are times when all of us feel, am I making a difference? Well, what's the point? I mean, I'm a writer, and I talk about kindness and positive things and stuff, but I have my days too, and I feel, I struggle, we all do. And you worry, you say, what's the point? Am I really making a difference? The job that I do or the things that I do in the world, do they really matter? And I'm telling you that you do. That they all do. Even the seemingly small things that you do are always making a difference. You just don't notice because you don't say or do something kind and then you follow the person around. You get on with the rest of your day. I just want to get across what happens next. It's a really important bit. It's the big bit. It's the ripple effect that follows on the back of these seemingly little things you do. So you're doing a great job. Keep it up. All the little things count.